Have you ever tried to watch the football on the weekend but you can't find the game? Or you want to watch a big fight on the weekend but you don't want to spend a fortune on the pay-per-view? Or what about the latest TV series that isn't out in your country yet? Well, a VPN is the way to go to solve all of these issues. And the one I use is Proton. Now, Proton is a Swiss company founded by a team of scientists with the goal of building a better internet. And they have 100 million people using their service, with a network of over 4,200 servers in 91 countries. So you can log in and connect to a region all over the world. So once you've signed up, the browsing experience is super quick, and they don't limit bandwidth, so you know the connection will be smooth wherever you are. All of your information is kept private and there is no monitoring of your browsing activity. And I'm not a tech genius and I find it super easy to use. One of the best features is the integrated ad blocker, which helps so that when you're reading articles you're not bombarded with pop-ups all the time, or other websites for that matter. But by far the best thing for me about this is the access to sport. So if you sign up to Proton VPN using my link in the description below, you will get 1 month for free in the 12-month plan. And if you sign up for 24 months, they'll give you 3 months for free. So check out the best VPN that I've ever used using the link in the description below. Welcome back to the True Geordie podcast. Today's guest, I am joined by Matthew Jury, ironically, a lawyer. I bet you get that a fair bit, mate.
Yeah, call it nominative determinism, I think is what they call it.
Just born for the job, mate. Yeah. You are a lawyer who is representing a group of women who are from one of the cases against Andrew Tate. I've invited you here today because we always see Andrew Tate invited on so many different podcasts, and no one ever seems to really give a voice to the victims, and that's why you're here today, mate. I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me here. I mean, you're quite right. The victims don't have a platform. And I'm sure we're going to have, once you've put this out there, you're going to have the tater tots, I think that's the colloquial description of them, coming out going, well, why weren't the victims there themselves?
Yeah.
Why are they anonymized? Do they really exist? They're fake. They're part of the matrix. The fact is, I'm here for them to speak for them because they have to keep their identities anonymous so they're not abused and harassed, not only online, but in real life. But we can touch on more of that later. But anyway, no, but thank you so much for having us here. It's really important and really appreciated.
No, I appreciate that, mate. And just, I want to start off by mentioning the fact that these women are doing this out of their own pocket. There is a lot of money involved in pursuing Andrew Tate for what he's allegedly done to them. So you guys you're doing like fundraising for this, right?
Yeah, so the victims are fundraising on Crowd Justice, which is an online platform, to meet their legal costs. We're doing what we can. We're working non-profit essentially, so we're match funding our time. But there are costs for counsel, experts, investigators, witness costs. It all mounts up. Unfortunately, it's an expensive process. They shouldn't be having to do this because it's our opinion that Tate should have been properly investigated and prosecuted here in England a long time ago. If he had been, we wouldn't be having to do the job that we're doing now, which is the victims taking action themselves to bring him to court, taking this private action. But it's hugely important that these victims get the platform that they deserve, which thank you for, being one of those people supporting that, but also that they get the financial support they need to do what they're doing, which isn't just for them. Let's be absolutely upfront about that. It's not just about them. It's not just about justice and accountability for them. It's for all the other alleged victims of Tate's alleged crimes. But beyond that, it's also for all victims of rape who haven't been believed, whose complaints weren't properly investigated. I
mean, I've seen the statistics. It's shocking, mate. How low a success rate that people have when they've been through that.
0.1%.
Yeah,
I might want to check that, but I think it's something around. It's a crazy number, crazy low number. And then beyond that, even it's actually about stopping the spread of Tate's misogynistic message, both online and in real life, which is just. It's dragging all of our youth down, not just vulnerable young men and boys, but it's the knock-on consequences for women and girls. So this is hugely important what they're doing, what the victims are doing, and they're being immensely brave doing it. So
we'll put the link in the description below for anyone who would like to help these women out there. And we are going to go into all of the multiple cases. You obviously are acting on behalf of the civil case of these women who brought this to the police years ago. It wasn't properly investigated in their opinion, and therefore now they're taking action later. There's now 2 other cases, obviously one in Romania, one that very recently kicked off in England. And ironically, you kind of helped a little bit in that you were sent a clip of Aidan Ross, who's a friend of Andrew Tate, who read out a text message from Andrew Tate when Andrew had said, "I'm leaving Romania and I'm never coming back, so you better come and see me now." And you alerted authorities about that, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a really odd story. I've had a few odd moments in my career, but that probably breaks the top 10, I would think. But there's a really great group of people who are online who follow all of Tate's movements and announcements, and they're incredibly important actually, because as you said earlier, Tate's got this massive platform and a huge number of supporters. But there's this tiny group, they call themselves Team Matrix, which I think is tongue in cheek. But quite often I'll get little tips from them, what's going on. And one of them very kindly sent me this link to the Aidan Ross video and said, what do you think about that? And of course, you've got to take it seriously. I mean, the criminal prosecution in Romania, the trial may or may not happen this year. It's going to go on for quite a while. So for Tate to say, I'm not going to be in Romania much longer and I'm leaving soon, so if you want to see me, get out here quick, you can't interpret that as anything other than the guy's a potential flight risk. So we brought it to the attention of the UK police and the Romanian authorities. And essentially what we said to the UK police is, if you are investigating him and there is an intent to prosecute him, then you better get a move on, because this is what's happening. There's a real risk here. I think we wrote to them on maybe the Tuesday or Wednesday, and then on the Monday he was arrested on the foot of an extradition warrant from the UK. Now I can't say whether it was our communication that put that into motion, but the timing would suggest that that's probably the case. And it's also nice to think that Aidan Ross set the hairs running. That's worth something at least.
And as we said earlier, Tate is great at controlling the narrative, because so many of these podcasters, no matter what he's accused of, are desperate to have him on the show because he's so highly talked about. But, for me, as someone who's done a bit of research, I find it frustrating watching countless, big name interviewers, Piers Morgan, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, all of these people sit in front of him and act like they've done no research at all.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what that's like for you. What is it like for you?
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, my opinion is, I think they're grifters. That's my opinion. I think they're grifters. I don't think they believe what they're saying. I don't think they believe in the positions they're taking necessarily. They're
doing it because their beliefs align with people who also support Tate, so they're trying to stay on side.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Yeah. But I think ultimately it's eyes on screen. It's clicks.
Yeah,
it's getting their numbers up. It's about the money. And it's about profile. And Tate sells clicks. Tate sells views. I mean, if that's the right phraseology, I don't really know. It's not my expertise, but you put Tate on, you interview Tate, you put him on your channel or whatever else, and then you're going to get people watching.
But what does that then do to the victims, where Andrew Tate will sit in front of Piers Morgan and say, there is no evidence, there are no victims?
Yeah.
What does that do to the victim?
It's incredibly traumatizing. It's gaslighting is what it is. And it's a gaslighting that's being facilitated by the likes of Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. I don't want to be too harsh on Piers Morgan, because I think sometimes he's got, he's not, I don't think he's in the same league, quite frankly, of awfulness as some of the others. But I do think Morgan's interview was very ill-advised.
It's very frustrating for me as an interviewer, because I'm viewed as the working class interviewer. And when I see people who speak in a certain way, who have a certain level of money that I don't have, and researchers, and I sit there and I think, well, I could have done a few hours research and boom, and come up with a way more information than what you clearly got into this interview with.
Yeah.
And I'm not here representing the victims personally, but for you, obviously you are. It's so disappointing, mate.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, I'm not hard to find.
Yeah.
If you want to talk to the victim's representative, you can email me.
Exactly.
Pick up the phone to me. Ask me the questions. And dare I say, look, I'm a solicitor. I'm an officer of the court. We're supposed to take our duties seriously. And, some people may laugh at this, but for a doctor, you've got the Hippocratic Oath, and it's thou shalt not cause any harm, right? As a lawyer, it's thou shalt not lie. I mean, of course, look, we present our arguments, we advocate, etc., but we've got to remain honest. I can't sit here and say anything that I don't believe to be true. I can't do that. I lose my job. I get struck off. It's the end of my career, right? So it's a pretty safe bet if you call a legal representative, they're going to give you an honest steer. You'd like to think anyway.
Why do you think Tate does it? Because in terms of what he's facing, right, in Romania, he's facing a single judge who's going to make a decision on him. So why does he care so much about the narrative when it really isn't going to influence his trial? Or is it? Am I wrong?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So why does he care so much about the narrative? This is speculation, of course.
Of course.
I personally have a real fear that Tate will abscond before the trial, or at least try to abscond. What does that mean? Sorry, abscond, to leave, to flee, to run away. Right.
Well, ironically, you're saying that on the day that as we're recording this, P. Diddy.
Yes.
Has just been raided by the feds for sex trafficking.
Yeah, I read that this morning.
And the man's plane's taken off. They don't know where he is. It's not unheard of. Do you know what I mean? So you've got logic.
And it's not unheard of in Romania. And this is not a criticism of the Romanian authorities. I mean, they really have done an amazing job, and credit to them, and actually have put our own police and prosecutors to shame. The fact that they've done, they've taken this seriously, they've taken it on. But there is a history of individuals such as Tate facing prosecution for serious crimes with links to organised crime, alleged links to organised crime, I should say, fleeing before the trial takes place. So I think as the net tightens and he begins to realise that actually this is happening, there's going to be a trial and he may not win. He may not be successful, and he may be facing a long time in prison. I think there's a real risk that he might try and run.
How confident do you think he really is deep down? Because I've spoken to people who've interviewed him, and they've said he's supremely confident that this is a load of rubbish, it's fabricated, and it's going to be proven that he did nothing wrong. How confident is he really, in your opinion?
Well, put it this way: my clients, victims of alleged rapes and other sexual assaults, they know what happened. They know what happened. They know what the truth is. I'd say he knows what the truth is. And that's what the court's there, is to determine the truth. And the prosecution would not have been brought if there wasn't an abundance of evidence supporting the allegations against him. Now, he's innocent till proven guilty. I've got to stress that. And I'm not just doing that, paying lip service. That's really important to say. He's innocent until proven guilty. But this prosecution would not be being brought unless there was some very serious evidence to back it up.
And the interesting thing for me is obviously, right, we had I believe it's 7 victims in Romania who have been named, not named as in they've been listed. Then you've got 4 in your case.
Yes.
Now we've got more coming out in a new case in England, which I believe is at 3.
Yes, well, at least 3. And that's what we understand from the extradition request that was made by the UK to the Romanian authority. Is Romanian press have reported that it concerns 21 individual allegations. I don't think that means that there are an additional 21 women, because I believe it also refers to 3 individual complainants. So to the best of my knowledge, it's 3 new complainants, so 3 new victims have come forward with an additional 21 criminal complaints. Now, those could be separate allegations of rapes or assaults, multiple rapes. We just don't know. But I believe the extradition request refers to serious sexual violence. So it's quite broad.
Being cautious in how I go about this, we'd say there's roughly 14 people who've been listed so far.
Yes.
And then have you heard of any more people on top of that?
Yes. We've been contacted by, I would say, between half a dozen and a dozen, I'm being purposefully vague, women who have made further allegations concerning not only Andrew Tate, but his brother Tristan. And those are allegations of, again, rape and sexual and physical assaults. They don't want to take that any further at this stage. And that doesn't go to the credibility of their allegations.
It's a lot to do for someone.
It's a very private and personal decision as to whether you want to come forward. Do you just want to speak to someone? Because some of what we do is just provide support and point them in the right direction if they need counseling or therapy or any other support such as that. And some of them want to be put in touch with the authorities. And then they may decide that they don't want to go on and actually, they just want to talk it through. So
that would take us to about 20 or more people. And when people say, oh, if they don't want to take it any further, that means it didn't happen. Or if you didn't report it at the time, that means it didn't happen. I've spoken about my own personal experience I had once with a babysitter when I was a child, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I can't remember. And in a thing that happened with me where, I mean, luckily it wasn't as bad as what some people go through, but you know, it happened. Yeah. And I speak about it now occasionally on podcasts to explain that just because I haven't gone to the police doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Just because it happened years and years ago and I didn't say anything at the time does not mean it didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And like, that is a frustrating thing, I imagine, for you to have to listen to when people insinuate that online.
It's hugely frustrating. And it's not just online. You get asked it by, we've done a couple of press conferences now in Romania. What is difficult is unless people are presented with a picture of a violent rape down an alley at knife point, then a lot of people don't consider it.
Yeah, if you haven't got the CCTV, like all the footage.
Well, they don't even consider it to be rape. You know, and there are... It's more complicated than that. It's more complex than that. There are complex issues around consent or lack thereof, etc. In terms of the allegations against Tate, it's pretty straightforward in terms of, do those allegations amount to rape or not? Again, I'm stressing not did he do it or not, but if you take those allegations, would they amount to rape? And those allegations are that the sex may have started consensually in some instances, but he then started to throttle them, and this is across multiple victims, same MO across multiple victims.
So there's consistency,
right? He would throttle them until the blood vessels in their eyes burst, they passed out, and then he would continue having sex with them. Now that, by any definition, is rape, right? No one's consenting to that. And you can hardly consent to it if you're unconscious. But the problem you have is, you know, these commentators online, etc. It's a case of, well, they were working for him, doing webcam. They lived with him. They had a relationship with him. Why did they stick around? Why did they stay? It must have been consensual. But it just shows a real lack of understanding of abusive, controlling and coercive relationships, right? And if someone has that power over you, if you're that scared of them, if they've throttled you until you've passed out and they tell you that if you leave, they're going to hurt you, what are you going to do? But trying to get that message across is far more difficult because it's nuanced.
Especially for some, like a lot of these lads online, they're men.
Yeah.
They've never been in a position where they're having a sexual encounter with someone who could kill them if they wanted.
Yes.
They've never been in fear of their life.
Exactly.
During a sexual... So for them to put their mind inside of that, small woman's body, they can't empathize.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of people talking are hero worshipping the guy who's claiming he's innocent. So they're naturally going to want to believe him.
Yes, of course. I mean, look, it's confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Is what it's known as. They idolize Tate because what Tate does, I think someone referred to it as a misogyny sandwich, right? Which I guess is equivalent of a shit sandwich. I can say that, right?
Yeah.
So he's got message. He puts out messages which are not unreasonable. You know, work hard, train hard, etc., etc. And so you got your work hard slice of bread here, and you got your train hard slice of bread here, and then in the middle of that shit sandwich is women don't deserve your respect and they're just here to serve men.
Do you have any theory as to why he doesn't respect women? Do you think there's anything that went on?
I mean, I'm a lawyer, not a psychoanalyst, right? I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, or it may be stating the obvious. I mean, I think he had quite a troubled childhood.
Oh yeah,
but I don't think it would be for me to comment any further than that.
In terms of the case, the details, I've brought them up on my phone here just so I don't forget anything. So, as you've mentioned, rape is one of the things he's been accused of. Human trafficking, forming an organised crime group. I mean, which he's been quoted as saying, whereas mafia as it gets in previous interviews, violence, as you've mentioned, and some of the possible charges I've seen listed were fraud, money laundering, influencing statements, and potentially trafficking of minors.
Yeah.
Should we go into the sort of system that he seems to use? Because it does feel like there is a pattern. And him himself, we've seen in countless videos explain, got to get them to fall in love with you. You got to, this is how you basically get inside their heads to get them to do what you want. So from your knowledge, in your experience, was it kind of similar with all of the girls in that he meets them, kind of dates them, has a romantic, semi-romantic situation with them, and then introduces the idea of webcamming?
Yeah, I mean, I should point out that not all of our clients, or indeed the victims I'm aware of, are webcam.
All right, okay.
Webcam models.
So some of them were just in situations with him where that took place?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So again, it's disinformation to say that these were all webcam models working for him.
Because that makes people less empathetic, right? If they're viewed as sex workers, we are less likely to have compassion for them on a whole.
Yeah. To dehumanize them just because they're webcam models is wrong in the first place. Just because they're webcam models doesn't mean they deserve to be raped or sexually assaulted, or that they somehow can't be a victim of a crime.
Well, I think he specifically, and this was apparent to me from day one, the first video I ever seen of him was back in 2019, where he was giving this spiel about how he identifies a woman. And my reaction on my video, which is what triggered him to respond to me back when he wasn't famous as he is now, I said, I'm getting R. Kelly vibes from this guy. Ironically, he's been charged with the exact same crime. So I'm quite proud that I nailed that one. And I think that's what triggered him so heavily, is he goes for those weak, vulnerable women who maybe had a difficult childhood, didn't have a strong male influence in their life, who were vulnerable to a man coming in. And as Jordan Peterson says, hitting you with confidence. Women often interpret that in their vulnerable situations as competence and someone you can trust, someone you can look at as a father figure or a strong male role model. And that's how he would get in their heads. And, romance seemed to be quite a key part of that for sure. Was that bit quite consistent?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I would come back on and is that it's not just weak, vulnerable women who can fall victim to controlling and coercive behavior. I mean, I can say, in all honesty, the women I represent, they are incredibly strong, incredibly brave, right? They've made their decisions in life, and by the way, I'm not passing judgment on anyone who's a webcam model. If that's your profession, that's your profession. I just hope you do it safely, and you do it in a way that you're not exposing yourself to abuse by others. But these women that I represent, and I honestly, I've had the privilege to get to know, I mean, they're amazing, incredibly strong. I can't even imagine having gone through what they've gone through and come out the other side and still be fighting for what's right. I mean, that's amazing. So I just want to put to bed that notion that to fall victim to, controlling a coercive behavior, somehow you have to be weak and vulnerable in the first place. I don't think that's accurate. Right. Yeah.
You may not be aware that you're in the midst of someone who is an expert predator.
Yeah.
And even as strong and as clever as you think you are, everyone can fall in love with someone who I mean, who hasn't fallen in love with someone who's an arsehole? But like,
we've all done it.
But some arseholes have worse intentions than others.
Yeah. It's insidious.
Yeah.
It's like boiling a lobster. You don't even know you're the lobster and you don't know it's happening. That the temperature just keeps going up and you just keep acclimatizing.
So just on that, we've got a document here explaining how he goes about with his conversations with women. This is taken from the Romanian case files of how he gets them to go from I don't want to do webcam to doing webcam. So at the start, she's saying, I don't want to do webcam. And he replies, I don't want that. I'll never ask that of you, so don't worry about it. Later in the conversations, he's basically trying to explain to her how that would work in her favor. I won't let you have a normal job where men see you in real life. No way. On screen, I don't care. But TikTok is better than a nightclub where men will try it on you for real. TikTok obviously being the code word for this webcamming stuff. I own you. You'll never be around real men again. You'll never go out alone again. Never. If you want to make a lot of money, do TikTok. If not, I'll give you money. But often I have big problems in business and I'm busy. It would be good for you to make 10,000 a month for yourself. For when I'm busy, why not? But it's your decision. She says, I can, but I can also find other activities and other ways to make money. I'll see. But at least we'll sleep together every night, right? No. We won't be together. It won't be every night. You can do anything for money as long as you ask me first, and there is no other men involved. So he's really sort of pushing her towards it without saying it bluntly. You do well to submit to me. You need a few slaps across the face. It's about yes or no. I can easily say no. It's about you daring to question me. But we'll talk after I receive the videos. The slap is coming. Anyway, later on, she obviously did the video and he said, you made me very happy yesterday. She says, that's all I wanted. I was a bit shy and I couldn't believe what I was doing. The girls made me drink before we filmed and I smoked a cigarette. I was very stressed, but I'm glad you're happy. It was worth it then. What is it like for you when you're reading this?
I mean, hearing it, you read it is, I mean, it's chilling, isn't it? It's frightening and it's upsetting. Of course it's upsetting. Well, we all have women in our life who we love and respect and care for. And to think of a woman being spoken to that way and treated that way is really unpleasant. But I mean, nothing compared to going through it yourself and being subject to that level. And it's abuse. It's abusive behavior. Let's call it. You can
see she has no interest in doing webcam at the start. She says, I block capitals. I do not want to do webcam. And he says, you'll not be asked to do that. So you can see, and as he's documented with his videos, at the first, you never suggest webcam. It's all about the relationship. And then eventually you get other people to help you. He's got the other girls there to try and convince her, which obviously they were a part of the filming. And this is a tried and tested method that he's been using time and time again.
Yeah. Well, it's called love bombing, right? The manipulator love bombs the victim, makes them believe that, you know, there's a relationship and that there's love and affection there, and then pivots to their real business. And he said that himself. I mean, that's I'm not putting words in his mouth.
Yeah, it definitely is the way he's ran his business, and he's made it abundantly clear. And I think a lot of people. I think part of the thing that's playing to Tate's advantage here is we live in a society where women are so heavily favoured in the courts, whether it be divorces or father's rights, or there's a lot of things where men get a raw deal. And I think he's leaning towards that, going, you know, they had their own free will. You know, I asked them, you know what I mean? He's going to try and use that as a form of defence. What do you make of that as a lawyer?
Well, firstly, I mean, I suppose give you my personal view on that is, I mean, I don't think it's that, women have the advantage. I don't believe that. But do I believe that we have some societal issues where, men are, unfairly and unjustly criticized in general, for simply just being men? I think, unfortunately, there is sort of there's a cultural trend towards that, and I don't think it helps anyone. But
I think that's where a lot of his support comes from, because he is outspoken about that.
But I think with all things, I think it's only a small minority of women who categorize men that way. Mm-hmm. They just happen to have the amplifier of social media to be allowed to do it. And it's those who shout loudest get heard, right? But yes, absolutely. That is what Tate is tapping into. And again, it's part of what I said was that misogyny sandwich, right? Mm. It's tapping into those fears and insecurities of young men who feel that they've been marginalized, and saying, actually, no, you're a strong young man who can achieve anything, etc., and be ambitious, be bold. That's not bad messaging, right? That's two sides of the sandwich. Mm-hmm. But again, you're saying that to draw in your audience is almost like the love bombing. You draw in your audience, and then you deliver your real message, right?
Which is be like me.
Be like me. And to be like me, join my real world. Join my Hustlers University, which are pyramid schemes, by the way, by any definition. At least, sorry, I should stress, my opinion, they're pyramid schemes. And actually, going off a little bit of a tangent, but we successfully had the real world removed from the Apple Store because we alerted Apple to the fact that it was a pyramid scheme.
I bet he didn't like you for that.
I doubt it.
Is he aware of you?
I mean, he's referred to me a couple of times as his favorite word is dork, right? Mm-hmm. Fat little dork. That's fine. I've been called worse.
I've been called worse by him, to be fair.
Yeah. DNG. What's that dork nerd geek he keeps rolling out? I did try and get the Twitter handle, which was top DNG, but it had already been taken, unfortunately.
Devastated.
But no, there was a recent, honestly, I can't remember what he calls them, emergency war room meeting.
Sounds very important, doesn't it?
Sounds very
war room. You've never been to war?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You call this on the war room, you've never been to war in your life.
I mean, that would be a sight to see.
You've been on Big Brother, you've never been to war.
Yeah, if you put Tate in the armed forces, that would be something that's you can imagine, can't you?
Well, this is the thing, right? Yeah. We were talking about before about what he's instructing these young men to do. And if you're going to be this big macho man, the idea that you rely on, ironically, you put women down, but you rely on them for your income. They're your daddy. You're not their daddy.
I hadn't thought about it.
They're the one who you need them to live, right? You're the one who literally relies on them. So, as a grown-ass man myself, I can't think of anything more pathetic than needing a bunch of these women to keep your income while you're stealing from them as well, by the way. So, this is the thing that is highly embarrassing, and yet he's flipped it in so many of these young men's mind that they aspire to be like that. I'm like, why on earth would you aspire to be like that? I don't understand how you think that's admirable or manly in any way, shape or form.
But I think a lot of these vulnerable young men and boys, they almost not paying attention to that part of things.
Yeah.
It's the cars. It's his so-called mansion in Romania, which is not my description of it. I mean, I've had the misfortune to have been there. It's on an industrial park,
isn't it? I've seen the value of it. It's like £500,000, which with all due respect, it's not £500,000 a lot of money, but in regards to how much you're pretending you have, it's not even close to what you claim to have.
I mean, it's not a mansion. I don't even know what you'd call it. A compound.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure. I mean, even compound it makes it sound quite grand.
It sounds Godfathery. It's more like a warehouse.
It sounds like Pablo Escobar. I mean, it's not that. It's a warehouse. It's a warehouse that he's decked out.
Yeah.
For his videos. I mean, it's all artifice. It's all show. None of it's real. But to go back to the point, I don't think the men and boys that follow him, I don't think they don't want to be pimps. I don't think that's what they're aspiring to be.
They just want the end goal.
They just want the end goal, which is the fame and the money and the lifestyle. And they're willing to ignore all the unpleasantness if someone can give them that.
Yeah.
And Tate can't give them that in reality.
But he sells it as
if he can.
Let's stick on this webcam business then, because from what I read in the case files and what I've heard from his interviews and his brother's interviews, they for a start, the money is not obviously split fairly with these women, as if anything could be fair. They're the ones who are earning the money. Like, he shouldn't be taking any of it. But he from what I've heard in multiple interviews, 50 to 70%. And then he says he drafts up this tax letter. He gets them to sign it as if he's paying their taxes, when in reality it's all Bitcoin anyway. So none of it's even trackable. So he's taking this money off of them. He then controls their passwords so that they can't get into, they can't go solo and take their accounts with them or whatever. And apparently with one of the girls, I think the American girl, he took her passport.
And the commentators who say, well, look, they were walking back and forth to the compound. They were free to go outside, etc. Well, that's fine. But if someone's got your passport, you're not going to go very far. If someone controls your finances, you're not going to go very far.
Tristan was even quoted as, I do this so that they don't run away.
Well, exactly. So if someone takes away your independence, you're going to come back.
You have to.
You have to come back, right? You don't have a choice. And that's the model.
Have you heard anything more about the levels of violence or threats or that sort of thing, of how he uses that to control these women?
Well, I mean, we've all seen the videos of him beating women with a belt.
The blonde woman, yeah.
Slapping women, threatening them with machetes.
There was one where he gets to the door and she locks the door and he says something about beating her. Like, yeah, that's bad. That it was awful.
There's an abundance of stuff out there, and that just speaks to the environment in which these women were working and living. If your safety, your security, you're constantly threatened with violence, then it makes it very hard for you to leave. And you're told if you try and leave that, they'll find you and they'll just bring you back and you'll suffer the consequences. I mean, in the case of the victims we represent, they all made criminal complaints at the time, shortly after the alleged incidents took place. There was a criminal investigation which went on for a couple of years, and then but didn't go anywhere. In my opinion, because I don't think it was an effective investigation, and I don't think the complaints were taken seriously. Not because they lack merit, but because two of the complainants were webcam models, and because they were webcam models, they didn't have inherently. The police did not believe them. And that's an institutionalized misogyny. I mean, that's an institutionalized problem. And by the way, I really want to stress, and I do mean it. I mean, I work on representing victims of terrorism in cases against state sponsors, financiers, terrorist organizations, etc. And I've had the privilege of working closely with the police over the years in various different ways, and I've got a huge amount of respect for them. And I whenever I speak about this, I think it's really important to say that the majority of police officers and the majority who work in constabularies around the country, they are good people, very good people. They wouldn't do the job they do if they didn't actually want to give something back.
They are just people, though.
And they are just people.
Yeah, and they will make mistakes.
Yeah. And also, there are cultural trends. And thankfully, we're living in a time where I think there is a better understanding about issues of consent and about controlling and coercive behavior. And that just because you're a webcam model, that doesn't mean you can't be raped or assaulted. But sadly, I do think that the police dropped the ball in 2014 when the complaints were first made. And in 2016, they only picked the ball back up again because Tate was on Celebrity Big Brother. And there was the whole scandal around that because the video surfaced of him beating a woman with a belt, and he was kicked out of Celebrity Big Brother. And there were questions asked as to why he was allowed on the show and why he was picked and why he wasn't kicked out sooner. And the police were pressured to pick up the ball again and reinvestigate. That went through to 2019, and then the Crown Prosecution Service made a decision not to take any further action. This is even though one of the victims has got text messages from Tate saying, "I love raping you," and you've got another victim who witnessed the rape of one of the other women. It's not very often you get an eyewitness to a rape, and yet you had one in this case, and yet there was a decision not to prosecute. I don't know for sure why the CPS made that decision. All I know is I believe it was the wrong decision.
Well, when you've got in the region of 20 people now or more.
Yes, coming forward.
Yeah, the term smoke without fire springs to mind, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing that they made this mistake, especially when you lay it out like that. We had the video evidence, we had a witness, we had a person saying it had happened to them. What more do you need?
Yeah, you've got multiple victims.
Yeah.
Yeah, and independent of each other, and all telling the police, making a complaint, which rests on a similar fact pattern, which is they were all throttled to the point of unconsciousness. Now, no one makes that up in a vacuum, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you say that they weren't linked to each other, they were still telling the exact same story.
Exactly. I mean, I find it puzzling, but maybe I'm naive. I don't know, but I find it distinctly puzzling as to why there wasn't an effective investigation in the first place, and why the CPS, given the evidence that they had, didn't do anything.
The woman who received the message of that he loved doing that to her, he also left voicemails as well, didn't he? I'm just going to play a couple just so that people at home can get an idea of, because it's surprising how many people have not heard these.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this is a woman who you directly have worked with.
I'm not going to confirm or deny.
Okay.
But if they're then the voice notes that I think they are, then I can attest to their authenticity.
Okay, so that so as in, because some people would say artificial intelligence would make these or whatever. Yeah, but you're saying that.
Well, there's a very clear answer to that. That's the technology to do that didn't exist in 2014.
Okay,
right. So
I'll play a little bit of this, and what someone has done is spliced in the voice actor.
Yeah.
Of her account as well. So I'll just play a little bit of this so that people can get an idea. It's very short.
Am I a bad person? Because the more you didn't like it, the more I enjoyed it. I loved how much you hated it. Turned me on. Why am I like that? Why?
Whilst we were having sex, he put his hand on my throat and strangled me until I lost consciousness. But he was still having sex with me when I kind of came back around again.
I am one of the most dangerous men on this planet. Sometimes you forget exactly how lucky you were to get by me. Would you rather me pin you down and make you do things you didn't like, or would you rather you didn't like that I was thinking I can do whatever I want to you? That's what it is. I'm the smartest person on this planet.
And then the next day, one of the whites of my eyes had gone completely red. Apparently, that's kind of common in domestic abuse cases where there's a lack of oxygen in your brain. So your blood vessels start bursting to kind of try and get the oxygen there.
Are you seriously so offended I strangled you a little bit? You didn't pass out.
But he kind of kept saying, I own you, you belong to me, threatening to kill me.
Chill the out. Jesus Christ, I thought you were cool.
What do you make of that, man?
It's horrific. And it's so alien. I've borne witness to some pretty terrible things during the course of my career, right? Heard some pretty terrible things. But this is possibly up there with some of the worst things I've dealt with. And I do not understand how a man can treat a woman that way. It just doesn't compute.
Mm-hmm.
It is alien. It's something which I struggle to comprehend, but the reality is it's happened. That's his voice.
Yeah.
Those are his words.
Mm-hmm.
We've stressed during the course of this that, innocent till proven guilty. These are allegations. They're not yet proven. But all of that aside, that's his voice. Those are words that he spoke to another human being. And there's no excuse for that.
When we hear that, for me, knowing so many people flock to this guy to interview him, to get, their views, and really don't give a shit about the fact that there are real victims out there. People just eliminate that from their mind. I find it mind-blowing that so many people online still talk about this guy with admiration. I don't understand. And part of the problem is he has done such a great job in controlling the narrative. And this must be the first time in history where the prosecution, the people who, they want to bring justice, who normally would put, maybe information towards the BBC or, the big news companies, and that would be the narrative. It's the first time that they are being drowned out by the culprit. It's unbelievable. That there's so much evidence such as that, but also, him himself explaining, he's doing explainer videos on how to be a pimp, how to sex traffic, how to coerce them. He explains it all. Is that evidence going to be enough, in your opinion, to actually bring about a conviction?
Are we talking about in Romania or
anywhere? Because when I hear all this and I see what he's accused of, you see that there's so many women now in multiple countries. There's so many explainer videos of him telling you it's literally like a how-to video of how to be do what he did, where he's saying, I did all this. I can't imagine how that can't get a conviction, but I'm obviously don't understand the legal system the way you do. So in your opinion, is there enough out there? Because obviously we haven't got the DNA, the physical stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff.
I mean, in my opinion, there's not just an abundance of evidence, there's an avalanche of evidence, right? I've never been involved in a case where the defendant has made so many self-incriminating statements publicly, and contradicts himself time and time again.
I mean, he would have the one who released the video of him slapping the woman, obviously.
Yes.
That was him bragging, going, this is how I treat them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got him saying, I dealt drugs. You're saying, he got him saying, I ran a webcam business. You're saying, you've got him on saying how, the extent to which he abused women. You got him releasing those videos.
I've literally got a few quotes, right?
Go.
I had, I have to fuck them, and then they have to love you. It's essential to the business. I use sex as a tool to make women love me so they'd obey me, live in my house, and make me money. I have to retain 100% of her income. I keep the logins, the passwords to prevent them from running away. I know how to make sure a girl can't run away. And if you behaved, I wouldn't have hit you, would I? There's so many lines like that where you're just like you say, an avalanche.
Yeah.
He must be a defense attorney's worst nightmare.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah.
Which I think probably attests to the quality of his legal representation, but that's as much as I'll say about that, right?
Okay.
You can see it split into two different phases of his life, his career, or whatever you want to call it. You've got that phase where he's being very open about who he is and what he's done, because he's trying to build a platform, right? And then when he realizes, actually, I've got myself into a bit of trouble here, I'm coming a bit unstuck, he's now going, well, I was just joking. Well, not only is it not funny, I mean, I'm not going to be buying tickets for the Andrew Tate stand-up comedy tour anytime soon, right? Stick to your day job. Sitting that next to the allegations that have been made against him before he made those public statements, those public utterances, that's the real Andrew Tate.
It aligns perfectly, doesn't it?
That's the real Andrew.
Yeah.
And what I would say to those who are now going, well, he may have made a few mistakes. He's a cheeky chap, isn't he? No, believe what he said. Believe him. He's there telling you who he is. Watch those videos, watch those clips, and believe what he's telling you, because that's the real Andrew Tate. That's him.
Like you've said, everything he's accused of and everything he said he was doing align perfectly. It's not like we're having to make jumps here. No, what you said you were doing is exactly what they've accused you of.
Yes.
Funny old thing.
Yes.
So I'm assuming the judges of Romania, for a start, is just going to look at that and go, well, this is bloody obvious, mate. I've literally got you explaining what you were doing, and it's exactly what you're accused of.
Well, what I would say is I don't think the case in Romania is going to turn on that. The case in Romania is going to be based and is going to be, I think, one, on the direct evidence that they have from the testimonies from the women, from evidence they would have taken from his residence.
Right. When they raided it.
Yeah. From following the money. it's not going to be based on statements he made.
So, for example, they look at the money that came in, they look at the money that the girls received, yada, 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 and they'll realise, okay, this was an enterprise.
You would think that's how that prosecution would run.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this from any first-hand knowledge, by the way. I'm just speculating.
You'd assume that maybe the videos, the countless videos of him saying all this stuff, are more the icing on the cake then?
Yes. They had context.
Yeah. And by the way, he has him admitting it all.
Yeah.
Just in case you're in any doubt, he has this.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah.
I mean, I have to say, actually, I don't know what the laws are in Romania on introducing what we would call bad character evidence, etc. But his self-incriminating statements are certainly damning. And certainly you would think they would be sufficient in the court of public opinion, at least, for people to be pausing for a moment and going, hang on a moment. This narrative he's now selling that he's, a victim himself, he's persecuted, and they're coming for him now, but they're coming for us next. The Matrix. You might think that would just give them pause for thought.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how dumb people can be in believing this Matrix narrative.
I mean, but you look at Alex Jones talking about Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook massacre, right? And talking about how that was a false flag operation. And of course, very famously, he got sued by the victims' families and was ordered to pay millions, hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
But that's identical to what Tate is doing here. I mean, essentially, he's saying the women don't exist. It's a false flag operation by the Matrix. They're out to get me. Well, I mean, for the people listening or watching this today, I can tell you they exist. I've met them. I've spent time with them. What they've been through is real. They very much exist.
One of the things he's used is two of the girls who are still sort of, it would appear, under his control, have spoken out on his behalf as a way of saying, they've said we're victims, we're not really victims. What do you make of that situation?
I mean, again, I would say that they're under his control. It's coercive control, and they have been manipulated and abused to such an extent that they are going to say whatever he wants them to say. And indeed, there are phone calls that were recorded of him from prison to one of his lackeys, talking about how to manipulate them into making statements in support of him. So a lot of people latched onto that two of the women have said, we're not victims, etc. And they've even gone so far as to say, well, they've withdrawn their complaints, so therefore the case in Romania is collapsing because there are no complaints to prosecute. Well, no, they haven't withdrawn their complaints. They've just withdrawn their cooperation from the police. They're, I suppose, what we'd call a hostile witness now. But that doesn't mean that the police can't prosecute the alleged crimes that have been committed against them. They can still do that, and they still will.
I've actually got the conversation there that he had from his prison phone calls, where he contacts someone else from outside the jail, obviously operating on his behalf, and says, ensure victims 7 and 6 to look good at all time. No one cares about what ugly girls say. They must look amazing in all of the clips. Don't let them get lazy and wake up in the morning looking like crap, because no one cares about that. Then he instructs them to get people to repost the messages that they're going to do on Twitter. So he's clearly telling them to do these videos. And then he says, we also need a supercut of support. So we have a supercut with everyone supporting me, saying Romania is corrupt, a supercut with dramatic music, and put clips of me going to court, pictures of me going to court, in handcuffs, emotional music, like I used to do on TikTok. Make it seem really emotional. It has to be emotional. Emotional orchestra. Me going to jail, everyone saying it's a scam, put together a supercut and post it everywhere on Rumble and YouTube. So yeah, that's how he spins the narrative, and he's doing it from his jail cell even.
Yeah.
And I assume that you're also interested in the 2 women who were also arrested with the Tate brothers.
Yes.
Because they seem to be acting as, people have compared them to the Ghislaine Maxwells of this case, where they're the enforcers.
Yeah.
What do you make of that situation?
I mean, I personally wouldn't equate them to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Really?
In as much as I think these are probably equally women who have been taken advantage of and exploited, but they've been there for so long that they really don't know how to get out. Right.
Right.
I'd like to maintain my sympathy and empathy for them, whilst at the same time, they are themselves, they're alleged to have committed crimes and offences themselves. But I maintain some sympathy and empathy for their.
Do you think they're in so deep that there's just no way back for them, and they're almost like, maybe until the bitter end, once they see if Tate falls, they might break and go, okay, this is actually real now.
That's what I'd suspect.
Yeah. While the powerful one is still sort of telling them it's okay, they'll persist with it.
Yeah.
So what do you think the legal strategy is going to be from their side in terms of deny?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know if they've got a strategy.
Yeah.
Honestly, all of their time and effort seems to be concentrated on, as you say, controlling the narrative outside of the proceedings. Heaven knows what's going to happen when it actually gets to a trial.
Are they delaying a lot?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would think so. I mean, that's a pretty standard tactic in
just to get as much freedom as they can.
Frustrate and delay.
Yeah.
Frustrate and delay. But for all their claims of they try and spin everything as a victory, of course, right? When the UK sought to extradite them, the extradition was approved by the Romanian courts. Let me stress that. It was approved. It was just postponed until the end of the Romanian proceedings. And indeed, currently, until the end of any custodial sentence that the Tates might have to serve at the pleasure of the Romanian prison system. That's standard, right? Romania got there first. Let's put it that way. They started their prosecution first. They should be entitled to end that prosecution and let Romanian justice take its course before the Tates are extradited to the UK to face prosecution and potentially imprisonment here. But what it means is, whatever happens in Romania, they're coming to England to be tried by an English court for allegations of sexual violence.
So they could do time in Romania, get out, boom, you're straight into English jail.
You'd be coming straight from Romanian prison. You wouldn't get out, straight from Romanian prison, on a flight, England, prosecuted here.
If you had to put a guess on it, and I know this is very difficult for you, but if you had to look at it and go, what the most likely outcome in your opinion was for these situations that they're in, what do you see the future for Andrew Tate?
Well, I've told you my fear that he may flee before it gets to trial in Romania. Mm-hmm. And I really do wish there were tighter bail conditions and restrictions in place in Romania.
Yeah.
But that you know, I'm not questioning how the courts have applied the Romanian law. The law is what it is in Romania, and that's the system that they're working within. Mm-hmm. But it makes me nervous that he is allowed to travel freely around Romania, given his statements about leaving, etc. Especially given those statements. But if it goes to trial in Romania, I would be personally very surprised if it didn't end in serious prison time in Romania.
What level, how many years would you imagine, given what you know? I mean, obviously you're not practicing under Romanian.
I wouldn't want to speculate on that in terms of sentencing guidelines, etc. But I would imagine it would be a substantial period of time.
And then over to the UK in a similar thing.
And then the extradition's already been approved. Mm-hmm. So extradited to the UK to be prosecuted here for further alleged offences.
I hear why you're scared then of him doing a runner, essentially, because if you're him and you know, all right, if this does go to trial, I'm fucked. If it, as confident as he likes to act on camera, he obviously knows deep down that, there isn't really a way out of this. And then you've got the English court as well waiting, like, how long is that? Do you know what I mean? Because I've seen, in even just my limited research, people talking about 10 to 20, hefty amount of years for a guy like that. Yeah. Does that sound about right to what you've heard? Yeah. So, and then there's the UK issue as well, which is God knows
on top of that.
Yeah. So you're not looking at whatever you're looking at Romania plus England.
Yes.
Which is brutal, in his mind, because people like him, they live for the chaos that they can cause out on the streets, right? And putting him in a cell would be his worst nightmare, despite how he acts like, oh, I breezed it or whatever. I mean, that was a few months, mate. Try looking at the rest of your life.
If he's convicted, life isn't easy for sex offenders.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in Romania, because I actually interviewed a Romanian guy who'd been to prison, and he explained that to me, like, this ain't going to be nice. Like, what he's doing now, where he's in a nice little bunk with his brother, it won't be like that when you get the proper time, from what I understand. You'd think they'd separate them.
You'd think.
So in regards to your client specifically, because obviously you're not working directly with the other cases that we're talking about, and we're still learning about the English case that's come out now, what's the next steps for them?
Well, the next steps for them is that, of course, they're still pursuing their civil case, as is their right to do. But also, we're instructed to represent them in, let's just put it this way, encouraging the UK authorities to revisit their investigation, or make a different decision as to whether to prosecute Tate for the complaints that were made by our clients back in 2014.
So that could restart potentially in future?
Potentially. I have deep concerns, which I've already expressed, that the investigation may not have been an effective one, and that the decision by the CPS in 2019 not to prosecute was a wrong one. We went back to the police in early last year, so early 2023, and they were very clear to us that in their opinion there was sufficient evidence for Tate to have been prosecuted by the CPS, and that they disagreed with the CPS's decision, right? We went to the CPS and said, are you going to reconsider your decision in light of the fact that Tate's been arrested and is being prosecuted for the very crimes he's alleged to have committed here in England? And the answer was a resounding, no, we're not. Now, I'm going to stress, this is just my opinion, but I believe that there is a chance that was a very political decision by the CPS. Because how could the CPS turn around now and say, you know what, we got it wrong. We should have prosecuted him for the alleged crimes he committed in Hertfordshire, or which were under investigation by the Hertfordshire Constabulary. We should have prosecuted him for those years ago, and before he fled to Romania, where he went on to allegedly commit more crimes, and where he has been the subject of an investigation and prosecution by the Romanian authorities that has likely cost the Romanian taxpayer millions. How does the CPS own up to that mistake now? I'm not sure that they can, without there being very serious blowback.
People don't want to lose jobs, which would be potentially the outcome of that, right? Because when you look into people, when you look into cases that have gone like that, people tend to lose their jobs over it, so that they're not going to want to accept that.
I mean, I couldn't speak to that, but I do wonder whether there is a decision that's been made, which is, okay, so we're not going to revisit the complaints that were made to the Hertfordshire police, and we're not going to prosecute those complaints. Because if we do that, we've got to admit a very serious mistake that had some far-reaching ramifications. So what we're going to do instead is we're just going to hide behind the fact that Bedfordshire has investigated the complaints by women under their jurisdiction, and that the CPS has obviously decided to prosecute those complaints.
The new ones, sorry.
The new ones.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the Hertfordshire...
We'll get them anyway, sort of thing.
The Hertfordshire vixens, we've got them anyway, so that's fine. It's not fine.
Agreed.
It's not fine. Not if you're a woman who wasn't believed, despite the abundance of evidence, and was essentially let down by the system, which then let Tate walk free, allowed him to I'm going to say flee to Romania, because he knew he was in trouble here. And he's admitted that.
He's admitted why he went to Romania. He's even said the laws were more relaxed there. That's why I want to go there.
Yeah. Where he allegedly set up a human trafficking enterprise. And so I don't think it's unreasonable for me to have suspicions that the CPS realise they've really made a mess of this.
Do you know what, though? By not admitting it, by not accepting it,
makes it worse.
Do you think anyone's looking at you guys thinking, well, they've rejected it, must have been fine? No one's saying that. We're all looking at you going, dude, He's all over the news, man. He's taunting you. If you don't acknowledge this, all you're doing is saying, when we make mistakes, we'll never accept it. And we're actually an organization that's incapable of putting things right. Yeah. That's even worse now.
It is.
You're not fooling anyone.
But that in itself, I think, is a scandal that hasn't been properly discussed, that hasn't properly been reported on, but I think should be part of the conversation. So to that extent, we've made it clear that we are seeking an inquiry, whether it's a government inquiry, a parliamentary inquiry, whatever it may be, into what's taken place here and what's happened, in the hope that our clients, the victims of those complaints which were made to Hertfordshire Police, will have their day in court. And not just in the civil case, but in terms of a criminal prosecution.
So they would be willing to go to a criminal prosecution situation if
our clients, yes.
Yeah. So it's not that they're not willing to, as some people kind of say online. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
In fact, the criminal case would always take precedent over the civil case. They want a criminal prosecution. That's what they want.
Yeah, because people have inferred that because you are going through the civil, it's just about money and all of that. No. And I've got to bring that up because I want you to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, firstly, they are victims of alleged crimes that have caused them serious harm and loss. Mm-hmm. If you're a victim of a road traffic accident, right? No one criticizes you for seeking compensation for the injuries that you suffer. Why is it then that if you're a victim of rape and you want to seek compensation for the harm that you've suffered, arguably one of the worst things one person can do to another person, right? The psychological harm alone that results from that crime, violent rape, is off the chart, right? Why is it we don't criticize someone for seeking compensation if they're involved in a road traffic accident? But if you're a victim of rape, somehow you're just a gold digger. You're a money grabber. You're just in it for the money. No, that compensation serves a number of purposes. One, to help them rebuild their lives, but it's never going to make up for what they've suffered. But it might help a little. Mm-hmm. But two, why shouldn't some of Tate's money, if it's demonstrated that he was responsible for those rapes, why shouldn't some of his money go to the victims? Right? And the irony is, what does Tate talk about most? Money. And how it's the most important thing. And that if you don't want money, you're a brokey. It's ironic, isn't it? That
it's all right when he does it.
Yeah, but you've got victims who just want just compensation. Yeah. Just and fair compensation for what they've suffered. But somehow that's wrong.
I understand how he gets people on side in regards to, people have made false accusations before in time of rape. But we're not talking about one person's word against another person's word where you've got, a celebrity who's worth hundreds of millions and he's having this 1v1 incident. We're talking about a whole bunch of incidents, clearly. And that the narrative that is being perpetuated isn't fair. And I do think that, much like my mistake in this podcast about thinking that the people who you're representing were all webcam girls, I think that a lot of people believe that they are all webcam girls. And part of the problem with that, as you pointed out earlier, is that there's a feeling about them that, well,
somehow it's justified.
Almost in the eyes of some of these supporters. Yeah, like, well, you're asking for it. That sort of attitude, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's disgusting. Uh-huh. And it's just not the truth. But as you say, look, of course, false accusations do happen, but they are the minority.
Exactly,
they're the minority, and rape is notoriously a difficult crime to prosecute. Because quite often it is one person's word against the other, right? But that is not what has happened here. It's not one person's word against the other.
You see, have you even got a witness?
There's an abundance of evidence, an avalanche of evidence that he committed these crimes. Innocent until proven guilty, stress it again. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, in my opinion, the evidence clearly demonstrates that he is responsible for what these women have alleged.
this is a weird situation for these women to be in, right? Because they're obviously, it's one thing when someone's done something nasty to you. I've had people do shit things to me in the past, not nearly as bad as this. But the beauty is I get to close the door, walk away and move on with my life. And that's how I operate as a person. For these women to have the person who allegedly did this to them all over the news consistently, there is no escape for them. And you're obviously trying to bring some sort of peace of mind to them. What will this case mean to you personally when it's all said and done, do you think?
Gosh, me personally, I just want to have done my job to the best of my abilities for these women. I mean, that might sound trite, but this is my job. This is what I do. I'm here to provide representation for people who find themselves in circumstances like these.
It's important hard work, though. It's not nice work what you're doing. To listen to people tell you these stories and to then take on the avalanche of information. It's not easy.
No, it's not. And
you're sort of saying it's just a job, but it's a hard one, mate, and it means a lot to people.
No, it's not easy, and you do have to be, dare I say, quite robust. Try not to take it home with you. And but the reality is, it didn't happen to me. It's not about me.
Yeah,
it's about them. And I am providing a service, and I hope a good one. That's what's important to me. And I just hope that they can get some closure. As I said, closure isn't about the money. It's about justice. It's about having the truth told in court. And to your point, it's incredibly damaging and traumatizing for them to continuously hear Tate's utterances and those of his supporters day after day, with the platform that they have, essentially calling them a liar.
And I'm fed up with that from my fellow podcasters. Yeah. There's some podcasters, I look at them and I think I'm so disappointed in the standard of interviewers these days, and they let them away with it, and they hurt the victims by doing that.
I'd go further than that, actually, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, as they say, but genuinely, I'm so pleased that you reached out to us and asked us to come on. Because I think, as I said at the beginning, it's not, yes, it's me here, but I'm here just to give a voice to my clients, and they can't be here themselves. They can't expose themselves like that, because the amount of abuse and harassment they get is just off the scale.
Bro, you're talking to someone who has pissed this guy off before, and the level of, like, I got into a back and forth with him, and he instructed God knows how many of his little pathetic minions to go after sponsorships I had. I've had a lot of impact on my life through challenging this guy. And my sponsors didn't even stand by me in that moment. They ran. Do you know why? Because they were getting bad reviews on their little shop on the high street. I'm talking about Gymshark. I'm going to name them. I'm going to name a couple of others, poker stores. Very disappointing, because I made a mistake in what I said, but what I was standing for against this guy, I stand by. And I hope in the long run, when people look back at this, that they see who was in the right and what I stood for was the right thing. And I might have said the wrong words at the time and been lured into stupidity because I was drunk on a live stream. But what I stand for is I don't want these women to be sitting there and to have this man tell them, you mean nothing, you are nothing, what you say is nothing, and just evaporate what happened because it doesn't suit where he is now in life,
And thank you for saying that. I mean, and genuinely, it's so important.
Yeah.
But it does lead on to the bigger issue, and what I'm so A, confused by, but B, genuinely disappointed by, is where are the male role models coming out and actually challenging Tate and saying, no, you're wrong.
They're too busy sucking him off, mate, to be honest with you.
Let's set aside the criminal allegations against Tate. Just what he's saying about women and the message that he's spreading and his indoctrination of vulnerable young men and boys around the world, not just in England, around the world.
Yeah.
Where are the sportsmen? Where are the actors, the musicians, the artists? Those men who are role models for boys and young men. Where are they? Why haven't they come out and challenged him and said, you know what? You're talking nonsense.
Because they could have used their strength.
Yeah.
If you're a heavyweight champion or whoever you're the guy who really is the alpha.
Yes.
These are the people we need to say that. And ironically, there was one UFC fighter come out, Sean Strickland, a middleweight champion, came out and said he was full of shit. But it is disappointing. And I think it's because they don't need the shit, mate. Like, I personally don't mind it, but I understand. But equally, like,
But there are some people, surely. I understand that their agents are going, don't go near it. Don't go near it. It's
I've been told not to do this interview for the same reason, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, again, that even more reason for us to be grateful for you having us on. Thank you. But there's got to be someone out there who's willing to say, you know what? Screw that. Mm-hmm. It's just the right thing to do. And I don't care about the bottom line or that I might get some grief, etc. Those people who Tate professes to admire, whether they're sportsmen or actors.
If they turned on him, it would show him for the fraud that he is.
But why? But if I was them and I had any decency and Andrew Tate came out and go, I'm a big fan of X, I'd be out there going, I don't want you.
Do you know why?
Do
you know why?
Yeah.
Clout.
Yeah.
Because that is the social currency that we play with right now. And unfortunately, clout is like, there's guys, I know there's one podcaster who claims to be religious who interviewed this guy and piped him off, then does another video after he met him going on as if he's met God. Like, and it's this energy that when people, and if there's something I've really clocked onto in the last 12 to 24 months, it doesn't matter what you say, the quality of your content, who you really are as a person. All that matters is how many followers you've got, how many people like that. And you see people clicking up in the industry who, you'd never talk to each other. You've got a vested interest that you want to combine audiences. You want to pool your interests together. And that's really, it's all strategic now. And there's a lot of people who will just, become friends with other podcasters or other YouTubers just because we're going to join our forces and get clout out of this. And there's no authenticity anymore, and I'm so frustrated. And that's why I want to make real. I don't care, because it impacts my views, to be honest, doing stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I'd rather be able to look myself in the mirror when I'm 50 and look back and go, well, you were the real person that you are. You know what I mean? And I think that some people don't care, and they're willing to sell their soul. And what we've seen in the music industry 20 years ago, we're now seeing in this online social media where people are designing a character for camera that's going to help them be liked and get views and all of that. But it's not the real them.
Yeah. Well, all you've got is your integrity at the end of the day and to be authentic. And I hope someone like you doing what you're doing and actually being authentic will work out for you in the long run, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, I'm not claiming to be perfect though, mate.
No.
You know what? Women piss me off, right? I complain about women, right? But I love them and the most important thing in my life, right? But like, you can have a bit of a moan about women on your platform, but there's a line, bro. You know what I mean? Like, of course, men and women are different and we all piss each other off. That's fine.
Yeah.
But the level that it's gone to is insane.
Well, none of us are perfect.
Exactly.
And I'm a firm believer in judging. I try not to be judgmental, right? I try to have empathy and sympathy for everyone I come across. And we're not perfect, but we can strive to be better. And that's what we should always be pushing ourselves to be and moving towards, just to be better, right? We can all make mistakes, but to do that, you've got to be authentic, because you've got to have some self-knowledge. And you've got to reflect on who you are and what you've done.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're going a bit off topic, I suppose.
No, it's fine. I've got time.
But
well, mate, we're living in a world where one of the most influential people telling young men how they should live their lives is a pimp.
Yeah.
Like,
so, but that's my.
What on earth has happened?
Where are the other men?
Yeah.
Why aren't they stepping in to say, you know what? Why are you listening to this guy? This guy is overinflated his achievements, right? This guy who spreads a toxic, misogynistic message of hatred. Where are the role models? And yes, they may be worried that they might come in for a bit of flack, but surely actually, if they want to look at it cynically and commercially, that's fine too. You would think someone with sense would be saying to them, ride it out for a bit, but you're going to come out the other end. better off.
I think maybe they look at someone like me and think, it's not fucking worth it after what you lost in talking about it. You know what I mean? And fair enough, really. Like, I get it. If you've got a family to provide for, you might think, let's keep my head below the shots being fired right now. But in the long run, I think time is the greatest storyteller, right? And exactly. And hopefully, I agree. I hope that there are more that come out and start saying this is out of order, because it's been a long time coming, and I can't believe we're at the stage we're at, where even now the man is on trial and still silence from most people.
Yeah. And these men, obviously they've got mothers, but they most likely have sisters or daughters. They've actually got skin in the game here.
Yep.
That's what's even more bewildering. We've all got skin in the game on this, right?
And if it was up to him, just know, everyone, your sister or your daughter or whatever would be stripping right now on a webcam making him money. That's what he wants. But for me, if you're cool with him, you're not cool with me. Simple as that. Like,
well, when he's in our classrooms, when his message is spreading in through our education system, and this isn't hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating anything. His message has had a severely detrimental and negative impact on our children, and how they're and actually the difficulty in educating.
Do you know the problem?
Difficulty teachers are having in educating young men and boys because of Tate's message.
But he's filled the void, and the one thing you need to do to kind of understand how to destroy a maniac like that is almost accept what they've done well. And what he's done well is seeing young men are directionless, that people don't care about them. That's how they feel anyway. And they need a role model. And he has just put his hand up and went, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
Because there was no one else able to do that.
But that's why these other men, and I don't want to sound overly critical, but they've abdicated their responsibility.
To a degree,
They have a responsibility to step in. They really do. And I'm waiting for them.
I think that's a perfect place to leave it, mate.
Yeah.
You've nailed that so well. And I share a lot of those frustrations. And I'll also, just to remind people, the link to donate to the people within your case is in the description below. But I'm also going to put your social media links, because you're doing a great job on Twitter in trying to call people out. I actually found you because Candace Owens was perpetuating misinformation, because ironically, her fella is actually good friends with Tate, from what I understand.
Yeah, I didn't know that at the time. I've only just recently learned.
Funny old thing. She doesn't disclose that as when she's, behaving the way she is, as like a little fangirl over him. I mean, she was giving him goo-goo eyes for a lot of that interview, for Christ's sakes. But you do a great job on Twitter, and I think it's well worth people following you to stay informed on the truth. So I'll put that in there.
Very kind. Thank you.
And mate, we'll leave it at that. Hopefully we'll get you on at a later date when there's more developments. This was Matthew Jury on the True Geordie podcast. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.